We interrupt our program to bring you a special broadcast.
Robert.
He is tenacious, isn't he?
Scott.
He's a brave and a decent man. He's a pioneer.
Bell.
This message must be read in every newspaper, heard on every radio, seen on every television.
The Robert Scott Bell Show.
Now, I want to get back to the story of Portugal, right? Because it's the controversy. We're told drugs are bad, and I'm not a fan of drugs of any kind, street drugs, illicit, or the FDA-approved variety, which I'm even less a fan of that. So what happened in Portugal, you ask? Well, I'm glad you asked this question because it's important. It relates to what's going on right here. Remember at the South Carolina debate, we covered some of the audio footage, so to speak, from the Republican primary where Ron Paul was confronted with, so you want to legalize heroin, right? They always try to corner you to say, it's like, well, he never used that language, but he wanted to put it up to the states to allow regulation not on a federal level of these drugs, but on a state level. But yes, indeed, he felt like adults could be adults and let's treat these drug people as addicts or people with an illness as opposed to being a criminal. And that would change things. Now, a lot of people say, well, no, if you legalize it, everybody's going to take it. And then Ron Paul pointed out, oh, yeah, sure, we all in this audience, everybody here, if heroin was legal, we'd all want to take it, right? And he got laughter and applause because, yes, it's ludicrous. The vast majority of adults have no interest in these illicit hard street drugs. We're trying to get off of the FDA-approved variety as well. But Portugal did the incredible thing 10 years ago now. They basically decriminalized all of these drugs and treated it just as I mentioned, and not as a crime, but as people that have a health problem, an addiction. And here's a quote from the president of the Institute of Drugs and Drugs Addiction at this press conference marking the 10th anniversary of the law. They said there's no doubt that the phenomenon of addiction is in decline in Portugal. Decline! You hear that, Bill Bennett? Yeah, Bill Bennett wrote a big op-ed piece against Ron Paul and Barney Frank because they want to simply take the regulation of marijuana off the federal rolls because there's no place for that in the U.S. Constitution. That's a state issue. And the fact that a number of states have decriminalized it as well and put it out there for legitimate medicinal use, which is much safer than the drugs that they derive from it, like Marinol or other things. But the number of addicts considered problematic, those who repeatedly use hard drugs and intravenous users, have fallen by half, 50% since the 1990s when the figure was estimated around 100,000 people there. And this is out of Lisbon, Portugal, this story. Other factors also played their part, according to Gulau, a medical doctor. He says, this development can not only be attributed to decriminalization, but to a confluence of treatment and risk reduction policies. Again, take it out of the realm of criminality, and you take away the profit. So, part of this is the profit. Part of it is, of course, that it's illegal. It's mysterious. Let's try it. Part of it is, and of course, I never have, was never interested. But as I said, a lot of adults wouldn't be interested just because it's decriminalized. But Portugal's holistic approach, according to the article, has led to spectacular reduction in the number of infections among intravenous drug users and a significant drop in drug-related crimes as well, right? Most of the crime in America is due to the criminalizing of drugs and drug trafficking. We're talking about all the killing on the border with the U.S. and Mexico and all these guns that the government screwed up on and sold them right into the Mexican crime lords and bosses. They love the fact that drugs are illegal. I mean, it makes crime pay big time, and it makes a lot of innocents go to their graves much sooner than they should. But a law that became active on July 1st, 2001 did not legalize drug use. That's the thing. It decriminalized it. But what it did is it forced users caught with a banned substance to appear in front of special addiction panels rather than a criminal court. Seems pretty humane to me. The panel is composed of psychologists, judges, social workers, recommending action based on specifics of each use. And I realize the pure libertarian perspective would not be allow the government to even do that. And look, I'm not going to get into the nuances of that, but suffice it to say, this is way better than what we have going on now. And since then, government panels have recommended a response based largely on whether the individual is an occasional drug user or a real addict. And of the 40,000 people currently being treated, the vast majority of problematic users are today supported by a system that does not treat them as delinquents, but as sick people. In a report published last week, the European Monitoring Center for Drugs and Drug Addiction said Portugal has dealt with this issue in a pragmatic and innovative way. When are we going to be adults enough to do the same here in America? We don't have the money to continue to declare war on drugs, which has been a war on the Fourth Amendment, which has only been exacerbated by the, what do they call it, Patriot Act, the Unpatriotic Act, where Fourth Amendment no longer exists. Drug use statistics in Portugal are generally below the European average and much lower than its only European neighbor, Spain, the report also said. Right? Across the border in Spain, it's illegal still, but much higher drug use there. The changes that were made in Portugal provide an interesting before and after study on the possible effects of decriminalization. Imagine that. Are we going to be adults enough to look at it, or are we going to look at, no, we have to make illegal all things, all plants that make alter your state of consciousness. Listen, all food alters your state of consciousness. This show alters your state of consciousness. But it's not a drug. I don't even claim it's a healthy addiction. It's just a place where we like to come and hang out and let loose on liberty. That's right, health, freedom, and liberty.